might have a Jimmy Butler problem on our hands, Heat fans. Yes, you heard that correctly. I might be flipping my stance on the Heat all-star caliber player. I am Nic Rohloff. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I'll explain what I mean in a moment, but before we get into that, I want to set a record. The most likes we have ever had on a Heat show, 650 likes. Can we top that today? If you want to be a part of history, this is your chance here at the Heat Report. Hit that thumbs up icon. All right, we might have a Jimmy Butler problem. If you're wondering where this is all stemming from, if you go back to the beginning of this NBA offseason, there was some rumors out there the Heat could trade Jimmy Butler. Well, if you don't remember, Butler is entering the final guaranteed year of his contract. His next season is a player option worth $52 million that Butler is likely going to opt out of because he has already stated that he is not going to sign an extension anymore this offseason and will opt out and seek a supermax from hopefully Miami or a different team in the offseason. And that's kind of the issue here because if Jimmy Butler has no plans to extend with Miami this offseason or maybe during the regular season, and the Heat, which is being reported, do not have any plans to extend him either as they were non-committal. He is eligible to sign now. He was eligible starting July 7th, but he obviously has not happened as of yet and doesn't seem likely to happen. You have to ask yourselves, is Jimmy Butler going to leave the Miami Heat after this season? That's where we get into our question of, do we have a Jimmy Butler problem? Because unless Miami goes out and acquires one of these three players, which we've talked about in depth here about targeting these three guys potentially to add to this roster. Lauri Markkanen is the perfect four next to Jimmy and Bam, and he's got a cheap contract this year. Trae Young's that point guard that could really elevate potentially Bam Adebayo and Kel'el Ware in pick and rolls, and then Brandon Ingram is someone that is my third option in all likelihood, but could be a nice addition as he is a consistent 20-point per game scorer and a much fluid isolation guy instead of like a Tyler Hero or some sorts, and he also provides a little bit of length. My question is, if the Heat have no plans to upgrade the roster around Jimmy Butler, I think you should trade Jimmy. And it pains me to say that because I have been very committed to Butler. But he is a free agent next season, assuming he opts out. He is going to want a supermax, and he would leave Miami if you're not willing to give it to him. So if you're not going to commit to Jimmy and Bam and go out and get a third guy like a Trae, like a Lauri, like a Brandon Ingram, to me, you have to trade Jimmy Butler because I am not in the business of letting really, really good players leave my team for absolutely nothing in return. It's a shame, but it's where I am with Jimmy Butler. Let me know where you are at with Jimmy Butler. And be honest with me. Don't lie. I know some of you in the past have said to trade Jimmy Butler, but let me know your thoughts. Type T for trade or type K for keep when it comes to Jimmy Butler. I've shown this tweet a couple times, and I want to hammer this home again. Maybe this is the last time I show this tweet. Maybe not because, I like to plug my own Twitter, so go give me a follow if you haven't already. I talk about the Heat every day. But I said before Donovan Mitchell extended, you see the date on July 1st. If the Heat don't make a move for one of Donovan Mitchell, Lauri Markkanen, Trae Young, or Brandon Ingram, I think it's time to trade Jimmy. I don't want to, but running it back, which it seems the likely plan right now, when the East got better, is malpractice, and I want to trade Jimmy to get assets to build towards the future. And when we talk about potentially running it back, the Heat's roster is currently full. What does that mean? Well, it means they can't add anyone in free agency, which means the only way they upgrade this team is in the trade market. And if they're not making a trade, then this is your team and you're just running it back. Like, sure, I've kind of talked myself into this team being interesting. Not going to say fun, not going to say contending. But when you look at the squad, like, it does have good pieces. You have two decent scorers in the backcourt. You have Jimmy and Bam. And your bench is okay, right? You're assuming you get a third-year leap from Nikola Jovic. You're assuming you get a big jump in year two for Jaime Jaquez Jr. You bring in Kel'el Ware, a healthy Duncan Robinson, Highsmith coming back, Jay Rich is back. Like, you have pieces to make it at least interesting. But I am not sold on this team winning an NBA championship. And that is the question, right? If you look at your roster, you look at your team, you look at the Eastern Conference and the NBA as a whole, does my team have the capability to win an NBA championship? If your answer is no, why wouldn't you trade Jimmy Butler and build towards the future? And that's my one concern, is that when I look at the Heat roster, I think they can be good. And I'll tell you what my prediction and my expectations for the season is going to be at the end of today's show, so stick around. But I don't think it's going to be an NBA title team. So why wouldn't you trade Jimmy if the opportunity's there to cash in on your star player, get assets in return so you can reload this team post Jimmy Butler around Bam Adebayo? I'll say this, we'll have you covered on everything surrounding the Miami Heat, whether it be an actual trade, for agency, it doesn't matter. Make sure you subscribe for daily Heat content as we get closer and closer to 13K subscribers. And we are actually going to be live later tonight. Yes, you heard that correctly. We did watch parties for the entire regular season and postseason for the Miami Heat, and we're going to start them up in Summer League. I believe you're the first Chat Sports channel in the NBA to do Summer League watch parties. I think so in history. So come join us for Heat vs. Lakers, Khalil Ware, Bronny James. Should be a ton of fun. All right, this is why I'm going to trade Jimmy Butler, because I'm not in the business of losing elite players for nothing. I'm not. So ship him out, regroup for a year, and get back in the race this summer, because if you were to trade Jimmy Butler, one, you'd clear a lot of cap space in all likelihood, as you're not going to probably take the full $45, $50 million back, which is Butler's contract, in one single trade. And if you do, maybe you get some expirings to where you could have some space in the next offseason to make moves on free agents or take money back in a trade. And if you traded Jimmy Butler, you'd likely get at least some young players in draft capital, which would allow you to go out and potentially trade for the next disgruntled star or young player to request out of their respective team to join Bam Adebayo. Like, sure, do I think Bam could be a number one option on a title team? Probably not. Can he be a 2B? He can, and if he improves his offensive game, that's where I think he is really going to explode. Now, when you think of where Jimmy could be traded, I think these two teams make the most sense. The Houston Rockets, who have been rumored to want a wing in the trade market. Jimmy Butler's been named before. It's also where Jimmy's from, the city of Houston. And the Golden State Warriors, who are desperate to find that second guy, that co-star to Steph Curry, so they don't waste Steph's remaining 3 or 4 seasons where he's actually going to be a top 10 basketball player in the league. And if they miss out on Lauri Markkanen, I think the Warriors make the most sense to get Jimmy. You get a wing there who can play two-way, and you get Steph. Steph and Jimmy would be a very fun duo. You can kind of hold them hostage, if you will. And maybe this isn't the best term to use for it, but that's kind of how I see it. Like, if both Houston and Golden State are desperate or really are going after the service of Jimmy Butler, then you can drive up that price point and get even more back in return. Even if it's an extra first-round pick or a couple extra second-round picks, more than you usually would get, it's still more than what you would have had if you weren't driving up the price point. And to me, I will say this, though, and even though we're talking about a potential Jimmy Butler trade, sure, this offseason could happen. I give it a very unlikely chance, because to me, if a Jimmy Butler trade does actually happen, it would likely be in February at the NBA trade deadline. And this is where I think Pat Riley will really have to evaluate this Heat team and how they're performing in the regular season, because if they're sitting around 500 or below 500, and I don't care if you're going to blame injuries, like if Bam goes down, if Hero goes down, if Rozier goes down, if any of your key players get hurt for an extended period of time and you're a 500 team, I don't want to hear, oh, just wait till we get healthy, because it's been that way for the past 3 seasons. If you are not probably the 6th seed or better, which is kind of where I think this is going, if you are not firmly outside of the play-in by the time the NBA trade deadline rolls around and you're sitting at a 500 or below 500 record, that's when you need to strike when the iron's hot and trade Jimmy Butler. Teams will be seeking another guy. There's going to be a team out there that overachieves that says, hey, maybe if we make one more move, we can really reach that next stepping stone and be an NBA championship contender, and they look at Jimmy Butler as that missing piece. So you have to have a good regular season, specifically in the first 3 or 4 months of the year, in order for the Heat not to consider trading Jimmy Butler at the trade deadline. Which brings me to this question. And I said this in the middle of today's show, that I'll give you my expectations at the end. Mine are coming up in a second, but let me know your expectations for the Heat this season. You could give record, you could give what you're watching for, you can give me what their seed prediction is going to be. You just let me know in the comment section. My hope / expectations for this season is I'm going to be watching the development of Nikola Jovic and Jaime Jaquez. I am going to hope they take a step forward and they showcase the ability to be high-level role players or even give me a little bit of all-star potential that could build around Bam. We talked about Hero being a 20-point per game scorer and an all-star caliber player 3 or 4 seasons ago. That's no longer the case in terms of all-star ability, but maybe Jaquez and Jovic can develop into something like that. I'm watching their development this year. Another key watching point for this team is going to be how Kel'el Ware, the rookie out of Indiana, fares in his rookie season. Does he have the capability to be the starting center of the future of the Miami Heat and move Bam Adebayo to 4? And can you create a disgusting tandem in the front court, both defensively and offensively, in terms of finishing around the rim and spacing the floor? Those are the 3 players I'm watching the most this season, and honestly give me the most excitement for this upcoming year. But other than those 3 young guys, my expectation and my hope, my best case scenario, if you will, is the 6th seed or the 5th seed. Because I am not in the business of being a play-in team again. I'm sick and tired of being in the play-in. It also would benefit Miami greatly to get the 5th seed potentially, because if the Eastern Conference goes how we expect it to go, and it's the Celtics, Sixers, and Knicks in some combination of the top 3, I'd rather face 2 of them on my path to the NBA Finals rather than all 3. And if you're the 6th seed, you might have to play Knicks, Sixers, Celtics in succession. But if you could be the 5 seed, you play the Bucks, Cavs, Magic, and or Pacers in the 4-5 game. Have to play Boston and then one of next Sixers. So to me, you have to get the 5th seed if you have any chance this year. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. That's going to do it for today's video. You want to yell at me about my thoughts on Jimmy or the Heat or your expectations on the Miami Heat? My Twitter is the best place to do it. I tweet about the Heat on a daily basis. So go give me a follow. I'm a great follow for Heat fans out there. At Nic_Rohloff's the handle. And hopefully I see you later tonight for a Heat watch party against the Lakers.